Shown here are some of the items used in preparing the stone. The levigator for selective graining is on the left. The carborundum grits ranging from coarse to fine, and a file for beveling the stone edge. Smaller stones for grinding are in the background. Stones vary in color from yellow or buff to a dark blue-gray. The color is an index of their hardness. The darker the color, the harder the stone. In general, the harder stones are best suited for lithographic printing. Few stones are perfect. Many stones have red iron marks or stains, appearing sometimes as cracks. The most common defects are tiny veins that differ from the surrounding stone in color and hardness. These can be troublesome, but generally they do not affect the work. Leveling the stone. Before grinding begins, stones that have not been previously printed should be tested to determine whether their surfaces are truly level. Stones that have depressions or are thicker at one end than the other will print poorly. Testing is done with a metal straight edge and a strip of newsprint paper. When the straight edge is placed across the stone over the strip of newsprint, it should not be possible to move the paper without tearing it. The test is repeated at many places and in all directions. If at any point the strip can be moved, a depression in the surface of the stone is indicated. In addition to checking the level, calipers are used to determine whether the thickness of the stone is consistent. In this shot, the caliper is being adjusted snug against the left side of the stone. A slight resistance is established. Without changing the adjustment, the caliper is placed on the right side of the stone, and resistance, or lack of such, is noticed. The resistance should be relatively the same on both sides of the stone. Otherwise, the stone is wedge-shaped, and that could cause printing problems later. In this end view, one can see the space between the calipers and the stone, indicating this particular side is thin. Either the thick or thin side of the stone can be marked with tape as a point of reference for this graining session and later ones down the road. The thicker side of the stone will need more attention. Before proceeding, check both stone edges for sharpness that could break away during graining. A file can be used to remove those edges. The stone to be ground is thoroughly washed with water. Dirt and old ink images are first removed with a solvent. A small amount of the coarse grit is spread over the stone surface, in this case the 100 grit. Grinding begins with the coarser grades of carborundum, followed by successively finer grades until the desired surface is obtained. A stone 1/2 to 2/3 the size of the drawing stone is used in this demonstration. If the stones are of equal size, unevenness or hollowing out might be the result. For stones the size as shown, a figure-8 pattern of grinding should be followed. The basic consideration is to ensure that all parts of the stone surface receive the same amount of grinding. In this overhead shot, one can see the desired pattern. Multiple figure-8 patterns can be used in stones of larger sizes as seen in this shot. The next sequence shows the use of the levigator. First, for a level stone, an even pattern is used over the entire surface, somewhat similar to the figure-8 pattern with another stone. The second position demonstrates graining a higher center. The emphasis is placed on the central location and occasionally is faded out to the edges. As the sequence continues, selective graining is shown for a stone with higher edges or low center. The levigator is kept as close to the edge as feasibly possible. In all of these cases of selective graining, repeated checking with a straight edge will indicate the progress. Back to the stone method. In this shot, the left side of the stone is thick, so the emphasis is directed to that section. In all cases of graining, whether a stone or levigator is used, the procedure should be done until a light gray sludge appears. The stones are then rinsed thoroughly, fresh grit is applied, and this would be then considered one cycle. If the stone is level, it may take 5 or 6 cycles with 100 grit until the old image is removed. A larger stone can be grained in a variety of figure-8 patterns. In this case, a small stone is used because of the weight considerations. Graining should continue with the 100 grit until the old image is gone or reverses itself. The areas that were dark in the drawing appear bright, as in a photographic negative. There are no set numbers of cycles with the 100 grit. Its major use is to level a stone and or image removal. After the cycles of the 100 grit, 2 cycles each of the progressively finer grits are employed until the desired surface is achieved. The 220 or 240 grain is suitable for most techniques. When the grinding has been completed, the edges of the dry stone are carefully beveled and rounded. Work with the rough file first, then proceed to the finer grade to remove the gouges of the coarse instrument. Rounding the edge rather than beveling like an etching plate is the preferred method. Preparing to work on the stone. Select a proportion for the proposed drawing. A corner square is used to line out the rectangle so the proportions are consistent. A very hard pencil or a white charcoal pencil in this instance is used to avoid grease. Remember, the stone is sensitive to greasy hands and the like. Drawing may begin directly on the stone without a specific margin consideration. Light Conte crayon or charcoal marks can be utilized as a rough guide. Care must be taken not to pile up the chalk, since it will act as a resist to the greasy drawing materials. No matter how one proceeds with the drawing, the margins must be considered, since that space has a bearing on the printing that comes later. At least 1.5 to 1 inch of the stone edge will be lost either by a plan margin or if the entire surface is covered as a bleed print. This space will be used later to engage the scraper bar. The larger margin, the more comfortable the printing. Here the artist has decided on a defined margin, and small amounts of waste gum are applied with a brush to reinforce the decision. The gum arabic, when dry, will act as a resist to the grease, handprints, and overdrawing. In addition, the artist can determine the character of the margin edge by using different drawing tools to apply the resist. A speedball pen with watered-down gum is used with a ruler in this scene in order to obtain a sharply defined edge. Gum is then brushed to the line and the margin is established. Red chalk paper, a type of tracing paper, is used next for those individuals who feel more comfortable working from pre-established marks. The paper made with Conte or red oxide pigment leaves a non-greasy mark and can be used to transfer outlines of drawings or photographs. In this demonstration, a drawing that is to be transferred is taped in place over the oxide paper, and the image is traced onto the stone using a ballpoint pen. Here the artist is checking the location of the tracing in respect to the margins. Again, gum is used to paint out the large empty space. Inside the image, the gum is also used as a resist to block out certain areas of the drawing to keep them white.